Hi, this is Katie with Empowering Astrology, and this is your belated look at the astrology of January 20th through 26th, 2020. Yes, we're getting a start a day late just because I've been traveling out of the country, so was not able to give you guys your update yesterday, but figured, it's no problem being able to do it today. So, what's going on this week? And I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind in the astrology that this week is that we are coming to the end of a lunar month. So this previous lunar month, it began on December 26, 2019, and it was a solar eclipse. So a lot of things happen in the last 4 weeks. And it's quite possibly, for some of you, a lot of big things happen because that's what eclipses do. They sort of send us in a new direction. They take something out of our life. They bring in something new. And they kind of say to us quietly and sometimes very loudly that it's time to go on a new direction. So I think it's important to at least spend a few moments this week looking back and thinking, where have we been? Where have we gone? What have we learned in the last 4 weeks? And I'm not, let's say, a celebrity astrologer by the least of things, but I was really looking at what was happening with the UK royal family and what was happening with Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, and how that showed in a small, well, not small, but way, these major shifts of power and structure and government that was happening with this eclipse. And it was in Capricorn, and we had 2 weeks later we had the full moon lunar eclipse in Cancer on January 10th, and these kind of changes in family and changes in order and changes in power. I actually had somebody message me on Instagram, and they were like, what is going on? It seems like so many things are coming out of left field right now. And I'm like, it's kind of, we're in eclipse season. That's what eclipses do. Things kind of come in out of left field. I'm just looking in on the comments. I see some familiar faces. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining me a day late. I was just kind of recapping what's been going on since December 26th and the eclipse season. For me, it was a time of a lot of work. And then I had to travel. I just got back from Switzerland yesterday. I'm a Scorpio, so these eclipses were in my houses, my signs of travel, learning. I was taking classes on energetic sciences and learning about the human energy body and also our subtle bodies. So that's what I was doing, and learning a lot of things and traveling. And I'm a little bit jet lagged right now, guys. I'm not going to lie, but it's good to see some, like I said, some familiar faces. And so, eclipse season tends to be a busy month. And so maybe some of us, as we come into this week, we're catching our breath a little bit. We've kind of been on this whirlwind. And for me, I was in 5 countries in 4 weeks. If you count the US, if you count Turks and Caicos, if you count France to get some gas and go to Switzerland and have a layover in Lisbon, it's been a very busy January for me. So how are you guys doing? How was your eclipse season? Anything major come up for you? Please share. That's how we all get to learn about the astrology. Of course, should you want to share. So, we're wrapping up the lunar month this week. It's also Aquarius season. So happy birthday, Aquarius. And we are now at the 11th sign of the zodiac. So yes, we've gone all the way around nearly to the second to last sign of the zodiac. So we're starting to not just wrap up the astrological year, but we're wrapping up our journey through the 12 signs. And so when we reach Aquarius, we are starting to get to a part of the zodiac that's zooming out on life. You know, Aquarius is not about the sort of the individual level. It's not about the small things. It's not about mundane things. It's about systems and networks and humanity and the collective. It's science and politics and big ideas and intellect and ideology. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, and I know Saturn is Aquarius is what's called traditional ruler. So I know some of you might be scratching your heads and be like, wait, what about Uranus? Just side note, I use traditional rulers. That's a whole other conversation. But I think it's, even if you do feel very partial for Uranus to be Aquarius's ruler, I think it's important to look at Saturn at the very least, because Aquarius is an air sign. It's about ideas, exchange, information. You know, it's part of what's called the triplicity of Gemini and Libra. And this idea that Gemini is the first air sign, it kind of gathers ideas, and then we get to Libra, and it's about the socialization and exchange of ideas. And then where does that take us? It takes us to the last air sign. It takes us to Aquarius. And Aquarius is where we like literally have the shape of thought. This is why I want you all to think about Saturn as the ruler of Aquarius for a little bit. And maybe this is an intermediate point for some of you all if you're new to astrology and rulerships, and you know, Saturn being this planet of structure. And in Capricorn, that structure is physical. It's manifestation, it's matter. But in Aquarius, those ideas form structure. It's like the shape of thought, you know, this idea that consciousness, and it has like almost like a shape in the non-physical. And then that's what, you know, where we can see how maybe Saturn acts as the ruler of Aquarius. So as we go into the Aquarius season, do keep in mind that we will have an Aquarius new moon on Friday, January 24th. We're entering a time where we really do need to be more aware of what ideas are we really holding on to, what sort of structures or information structures and big ideas are we a part of, you know, what are the systems and networks of our life. So I mean, that's kind of very abstract, of course, but on a, let's say, a little bit, a few more pegs down, Aquarius is about friendships and community. It's camaraderie, it's groups, it's like our group affiliations, but it's also a sign that helps point us towards the future. So, you know, as I said a few moments ago, we're coming to the end of our astrological journey. Aquarius is the 11th sign, the next one's Pisces, and then that's it. We start the whole zodiac all over again. And we started with Aries back in March, and that's a sign that talks about beginnings, the self, moving forward, leadership, taking initiative. And here we are in Aquarius. It's a big picture sign. It's not just the eye, it's what are we a part of? Who are our friends? Who are our associations? So this is a month where we're really going to be looking at our social networks, not just, and do keep in mind Saturn is still kind of hanging out with Pluto and Capricorn. So if you've been watching some previous live videos, I was talking about this very, I don't know if I should say historic, but certainly very rare conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. It happened on the 10th of January, and it only happens once every 40 years, so it's kind of a big deal. But Saturn, you know, he's a slow-moving planet, and it's hanging out with Pluto. So as we go into this kind of Aquarius new moon, this Aquarius season, we're still kind of really working through that Saturn-Pluto energy into this next lunar month. And there was a comment last week about being tired of shadow work, and I hear you. I totally hear you. And you know, I think it's important just to reiterate that when Pluto is very strong in the astrology, as it was certainly in December, as it's been in January, we can't not but help work with the shadow. What is the shadow, by the way? And we're always working on the shadow. The whole, at least and this is me being philosophical for a moment, the whole purpose of the work that we do, and let's say using astrology as a tool for personal growth and development and spiritual growth and development, is using astrology to help us to see what's in the way. Sometimes it's ourselves, sometimes it's something else. And this is where we have to look at the shadow. The shadow is the version of ourselves that's actively working against us, and we all have it. So we've been doing some shadow work. We've been looking at ourselves the past month, maybe a little bit more, at different points, at least throughout last year. We've been having to take a hard look at ourselves and how are we in the way. So just do keep in mind that we're doing some Pluto work as we go into February. This new moon that's going to be on Friday, January 24th, it's also going to pick up on Uranus and Taurus. Remember Uranus and Taurus? For those who have been paying attention, and maybe for those who have not, Uranus, the planet, has been in the sign of Taurus since last March. So we're a year into a 7-year story of completely reinventing what we value, how we kind of interact with our bodies, how we're grounded, this idea of resource, what we need. And we're going to have different points throughout the year where we check in with this story. And so this week is going to be one of those weeks. How are we doing with all of our, let's say, changes in the sign of Taurus? Because Taurus represents a certain part of your life. I know sometimes I'll get comments like, well, I'm not a Taurus, or I don't have anything in Taurus, but you have Taurus somewhere in your chart, depending on what your sun sign is, depending on what your rising sign is. And in fact, in the show notes, I put a link to my Uranus and Taurus sign by sign guide that I wrote last year. Go back after this, or right now, make a pause if you're watching the replay and read, and you will see, maybe it will be more evident now, what area of your life has been in the midst of a reinvention, an overhaul, an awakening since last year, and maybe for some of you since 2018, depending on those who are early Tauruses, so those that are born like around the 21st, 22nd, 23rd of April. I'm just checking in on the comments. Hello, Marina. Hello, Joanna. Hello, Janet. I know some of you have had some big events, some big personal events, and then perhaps not some particularly pleasant events since the eclipse season. So I do know that about you all. But what I was saying earlier, this week, especially with this new moon, it's going to activate our Uranus and Taurus story. And Uranus is the planet, it's the one that's outside of Saturn, if you kind of look at the lineup of planets. And when we get past Saturn in astrology, we're getting outside of, let's say, the classical hierarchy of planets. We're getting out of what you could have seen, by the ancient eyes, that is, because Saturn represents the last visible planet. So every planet beyond Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and beyond, there are more planets beyond Pluto, represents something that we can't see without a telescope. So there's a sense of what we can't see. It was previously unconscious. There was an archetype that was unavailable to us from a human evolutionary standpoint until these planets were discovered. And so when Uranus was discovered in the 1780s, it was the time of revolution. It was the time of these big technological changes in society. But it's also a planet that kind of wants to shake us out of negative Saturn being, every planet and every sign has a positive and a negative way it expresses itself. And just do keep in mind, we live in polarity. We're going to see both sides, just like with Aquarius. You know, you're going to see the high side of Aquarius, which is a sense of freedom, a sense of camaraderie. We're all in this together, collective. But then there's the other side. There's the shadow side of Aquarius. And the shadow side of Aquarius is feeling disconnected, feeling like we don't belong, feeling alienated, like we don't have friends, we don't have community. So that's the other side of Aquarius. And so we might be seeing both of those sides during this Aquarius season. And if we are feeling the other side of Aquarius, how do we make the shift? How do we reach towards the sense of connection with Aquarius as opposed to disconnection? So what I was saying a few moments ago with Saturn, you know, Saturn, when it's not helping, when it's kind of the negative Saturn, it's oppressive. It limits to the point where we can get, you know, calcified, we can get stuck, we can feel like we don't have options, we don't have, we don't kind of can't see different perspectives. And then here comes Uranus, the planet that's meant to shake us out of what has previously imprisoned us. So we may have seen things in our life shift over the last year in this one particular part of our life, where maybe something that's previously imprisoned us has shaken up. And for those who are my Tauruses or my Leos or my Scorpios or my Aquariuses, you know, maybe you can look back since March of 2019 and see some big changes for yourself. Just checking in on the comments. Oh yeah, that's not good, Donna. That's a lot of things going on for you. So, you know, do keep in mind, Uranus is a planet that can kind of be that light bulb moment, that aha, that awakening, that sense of seeing things from a new perspective, consciousness, but it can also be a little chaotic and can shake us awake. It can break us out of the status quo. So this is an energy that's going to be not just available this week, but available for the next 4 weeks, because we are stepping into a new moon on the 24th. So for those that want to know the exact dates, this new moon is going to be at 4:42 p.m. Eastern, so here in New York, just like me. It's also going to be at 1:42 in Los Angeles. It's 9:42 p.m. in London. This is again the 24th. It's going to be 8:42 a.m. in Australia on the 25th of January, and then at 10:42 a.m. for those of you who are watching in New Zealand. So yeah, we're coming up to a new moon this week. Just looking at the questions. That's Laura asks, do I have a shadow side polarity guide of the signs on my website? If not, can there be a guide for them? That's actually a really great question, Laura. I would love to create that, hopefully sooner than later. And I think that, maybe this is a moment to take a step back and to talk a little bit about how I work. And I've actually been thinking a lot about this lately. Maybe this has been the eclipse season for me, and this idea of voice and communication and teaching, like, how do I better communicate what I do? How do I better teach? How do I better work with a client? Because at the core of what I do, it's meant to be a revelation. Like, I'm not the astrologer you go to where it's like, this is going to happen on this date, and this is going to happen on this date, and this is going to happen on this date. It's how do I help you find yourself in all of this? How do you, ask yourself the hard questions? And the thing, and this is just based on my own experience, is that your relationship with astrology transforms, and thus your relationship with time transforms the more that you kind of release these things that are in your way. It kind of shapes this idea of your self-awareness, your consciousness, your personal growth. It affects how you show up with this time. And the thing that I love about astrology is it reveals how we're all connected, and we're connected to this kind of great celestial mechanism. And when we were born, it was like our connection to time. You know, it's how we are living and growing and expressing and evolving through time, with different archetypes. And there is such this beautiful array of archetypes and energies and expressions that are in each of the 12 signs. I mean, maybe this is my art background talking, but it's like paint. You can make all these different combinations of energies, and you can kind of see all these beautiful things that make people, you know, these kind of individuals. But you know, if I have a conversation with somebody at age 20 versus age 70, they're going to have it's the same chart, different person. They've grown and evolved, hopefully, through their experiences of living through this chart. So my job is to help that process of maturation, and then awareness of self, that sense of personal growth. So to go back to your question, Laura, yes, yes, every sign has a polarity. It has a side of it that creates, and it has a side of it that destroys. I'm saying that as a Scorpio. I know destroy is a strong word, but yes, Jenna is asking about March, and I've mentioned this to a few people that I've been working with, and at least in my client consultations, that March, I will say in February 16th, Mars will go into Capricorn. And when Mars is in Capricorn, especially in March, it's going to activate those eclipse degrees. So we're going to see another, you know, kind of thread in time to whatever story opened up for us in December and January. So that's more to talk about that as we get into the second half of February and into March. Jennifer asks if I ever read, I think you're asking about progression charts. Yeah, I do look at what are called progressions, and this is for a little bit of an intermediate point for those who are studying astrology. You have your natal chart, and you have something called the progress chart. The progress chart, for me, it's something that, you know, it's another layer of information. You always have the natal chart, but you know, if you were born a Sagittarius, you will at some point in your life become a progressed Capricorn, and if you live longer, you will become a progressed Aquarius. This idea that if I want to know what's going on in your life right now, I look at the astrology of X amount of days after you were born. So if you are 30, then I look at the astrology of 30 days after you were born. If you are 80, then 80 days. So you will, over time, the planets will progress into different signs. They will make different aspects. So that's what a progression is, which is a little bit of a intermediate astrology point. But anyway, like I said, we have a new moon this week, one that's really activating this Uranus and Taurus story. Maybe it's important to go back and look and to see what was going on in your life last April, and particularly around, I believe it was the 22nd of April, which was when we had the Sun-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. So there's a certain area of your life that is getting reinvented. Go to my show notes, read the Uranus and Taurus sign by sign guide. That will give you a little bit of a refresh of what area of your life needs some reinvention right now, and what Aquarius is trying to, let's say, get you to open up to this week. But thank you all for joining me tonight. Quick mention about a couple things that are going on. Also, if you missed my Starstruck talk, I'm really proud of it. That's why I keep talking about it. That's why I keep saying, hey, go check this out. I did this whole great talk on Saturn and Pluto. And even though the Saturn and Pluto conjunction was on the 12th of January, it's still threading its way through the astrology of this year. We're still breaking down systems, we're still breaking down structures, but we're also building something very new. I have a handy guide on how do you practically work with this energy. A friend of mine reminded me that it's actually a pretty awesome guide. So if you go to empoweringastrology.com/starstruck, you have to sign up for my newsletter. That's the catch, to get it. But it gives you a side-by-side, very practical guide of how to work with this energy, like a little bit of a to-do list. If you're in New York City, I'm going to be doing a talk. I should add this to the show notes after the fact. I'm doing a talk on Thursday, January 30th here in New York. It will be in the Lower East Side. I'm talking about the astrology of 2020. If you missed my webinar, if you missed my event back in November on the astrology of 2020, please join me. It's a ticketed event. It's gonna have food and drinks, and we get to kind of get to know each other and talk about astrology. Again, that's on January 30th. I feel like there was something else. Can't remember. I'm a little jet lagged, like I said. So I will hopefully have more much to watch. Yes, I just saw that Diane said that she really liked my Starstruck talk. I really liked my Starstruck talk too. So if you got to watch it, please let me know your feedback. But again, thank you all for joining me tonight. Like I said, we are in Aquarius season, so make sure you're tending to your friendships, tending to the groups and the social networks that you are involved in. It's a good time for professional networking as well. It's also a season to get the big picture, to hope and to dream as we start to come to the end of the astrological year before we kind of go into the psychic womb that is Pisces season. Until then, sign up for my newsletter, sign up, or follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook if you don't already. And of course, you can always book a consultation with me. So I'm at empoweringastrology.com. My name again is Katie Sweetman, and I look forward to connecting with you next time. So take care. Bye.